Chapter 2. Sean followed her back to her house. It was a cute two-story that she lived in with her parents and brother. Tony had occasionally stayed over as well. It had taken her brother to convince him to stay away after the breakup. Ricky parked in the garage while Sean parked behind her in the driveway. She looked out of the garage as the door closed noisily. She felt like she was being watched. The neighborhood was old, with the houses far apart from each other. The backyards were huge, unlike the newer houses her friends were buying. Ricky usually hated those space-saving constructions, but tonight she would have preferred her neighbors' houses to be closer. She felt alone and vulnerable now. "Are you all right?" Sean asked as he entered the house behind her. "Yeah, I'm just freaked out all of a sudden." She closed the door and locked it. Then she turned on the foyer light as well as the living room light to the left of the front door. The house was empty. Her parents and brother were at a concert in Dallas. "You don't think Tony would do anything to hurt you, do you?" Sean asked. "I don't know. He took the breakup pretty badly." "When was the last time you saw him?" he asked, going to the kitchen. "Want a beer?" he added. "Yes," she replied. "And the last time I saw him was a month ago. He looked worse than before we broke up. And he was breathing so heavily, like the simple act of walking exhausts him." She waited for a response, but got none. She stood in the foyer, waiting for Sean to return with the beers, but the kitchen directly ahead was quiet. She had never heard the refrigerator door open. "Sean?" No response. She slowly walked toward the kitchen, never taking her eyes off the dining table in the corner. She wasn't aware she was holding her breath until she let it out slowly in order to take another. "Sean?" Someone appeared directly in front of her. She screamed as she backed away. Whoever he was wearing a black hoodie and matching pants. His hood was up, but his face was clearly visible. It was pale, with rotten skin. Ricky turned and ran toward the front door. Panicking, she couldn't unlock it. She heard footsteps behind her, so she bolted upstairs without a second thought. She rounded the landing and headed up the second flight. When she got to the second floor, she waited, breathing heavily. The figure's footsteps pounded on the stairs as he rounded the landing and headed toward her. When he got to the second floor, she charged him, ramming her right shoulder into his chest. He flew backward, over the steps, and landed hard on the landing. Ricky stood at the top of the stairs and just watched. Her heart was still racing, and she could barely breathe, but she couldn't force herself to move. Who was this man? Could it be Sean? No, this guy was wearing a different outfit. Sean couldn't have changed in the kitchen that fast. The man lay against the wall on the landing, his feet on the first step. Ricky slowly stepped down, toward him. He was blocking the way to the bottom of the stairs, but if she was careful, she thought she could sneak past him. She'd seen this in so many horror movies. Once she got close enough, the man would suddenly wake up and attack her. Ricky stopped in the middle of the flight and listened. Something caught her attention, so she held her breath. Breathing. The man in front of her was breathing heavily. It was familiar. And then she realized what it was. "Oh, God," she whispered, and then covered her mouth to quiet herself. She knew the man who sat unconscious on the landing. She took a few more steps, studying his face. Now that she could see it more clearly, she realized it was a mask. The man also wore black gloves in order to cover up every bit of skin, but she knew who it was. Ricky stepped onto the landing, between his legs, and then she stepped over. She expected him to lunge at her at any moment, but he didn't. She managed to get past him and head down the first flight, toward the foyer, but she heard movement behind her. She screamed as she felt a hand grab the back of her shirt. She tried to run, but she tripped and tumbled down the rest of the stairs.